When we begin to understand biblical prophecy, what's about to happen next is going to affect the whole planet Earth. We lost our land, our culture, and our identity. There is a great awakening amongst the scattered tribes, and now we must return to the covenant of our forefathers. The Father chose out of all nations the nation of Israel. Okay, shalom, shalom, Mishpachar. I pray that everybody's having a beautiful Saturday morning so far. To some of you that are observing Shabbat today, I say Shabbat shalom to you. I do understand that everybody is on the same page as far as Shabbat is concerned. But as we continue to work through our issues, Mishpachar, looking at the calendars, seeing what the Father has in store for us. Again, respectfully, I say Shabbat Shalom to those of you that are observing Shabbat today. I'm your brother Kasada Ba, Elder Zakein Kasada Ba, and I want to thank you once again for joining me again this early Saturday morning in today's class. Today, we're going to be, Mishpachar, based upon the title that we have, Tracing the United States of America in Daniel. Now, I did begin Daniel, the 8th chapter, but what I decided to do was to back up a little bit. And looking at my records, I actually didn't finish the whole thing with 538 to 1798. I want to make sure that we do this thing in sequence. And I believe that sequence is very important. And so as I do this class, I want to make sure that everybody is also following along with me. Meaning now is that when we're on a certain page, I will pray that you're on the same page with me as far as reading material is concerned. And then when we flip the page and go to the next page, that you also follow along. Now, obviously, tracing the United States of America in Daniel, starting with the 7th chapter, obviously, now this is not going to be a one-time lesson. I should be able to complete it in 2 lessons so I can get back to Daniel, the 8th chapter. Now, with Daniel, the 7th chapter, we get more revelation in the 8th, more revelation in the 9th, more revelation in the 10th, 11, and 12. So this is going to be a long time series. I pray that you're able to follow along. If you're not able to keep up on the day that the video is actually being played, I pray that you're able to go back, listen to it over and over and over again. And if you have any questions with anything, by all means, please get in contact with me at NUStudy, STUDY, NEWAGE, at AOL.com. So, with that being said, Mishpachar, let's go ahead and get today's class started. All right, once again, I am your brother, Zakein, Elder Kasada Ba. So what we're going to do, Mishpachar, is that we're going to read the Father's Prayer in Hebrew first, and then we're going to do it in English. Abinu, Shabbat Shamayim, Yit Kudat Shemka, O Yit Barak Melkutka, Retsunka Yahiyeh Ishui, Ba Shamayim, U Ba Aretz, Ut At Ain Latminu Tamedit, Umakulanu, Kata'atenu, Ka'asher Anaknu, Mukhalim, Al Tabi Anu Layide, Nasayon, Sham Ra, Ranu Makal Ra, Hallelujah. And as we say, Amen. Now let's do it in English, Mishpachar, which is on the left-hand side. I pray that you're able to follow along. Our Father which art in heaven, set apart be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Father, we pray that you give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us of our debts as we forgive our debtors. Lead us not into temptation, But deliver us, Father, from all that is evil. For thine is the kingdom, and all esteem belongs to the Father through his Son, Yahushua HaMashiach. We say hallelujah. Now, Mishpachah, we're about to get started. Okay, we're about to get started. And once again, I thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to join me here this morning. Tracing the United States of America and Daniel. All right, again, that is the title of today's class. And I pray that you're able to follow along with me. I'm going to be using the King James Version Bible a little, but still the NSAB, I'm going to be going into that version of the Bible because it's, in comparison to the King James Version Bible, there is no difference, but where there is a difference, I will try to point that out. But the King James Version is my sole record that I'm using when I begin to do these classes here. All right, so let's go ahead and get the ball rolling. I want to do a little intro before I get the class started. Now, tracing America in Daniel. Now, I want everybody to pay very close attention. Very close attention. Now, as I stated in all the previous Daniel presentations that I've done, the more biblical history that is read, the more information you'll find valuable to present to your biblical audience. However, the truth of the matter is, the well sometimes looks bottomless. I mean, there is a ton of information out here in regards to the premise that I take. And the premise that I take is the papacy is the Antichrist. And the word Antichrist and the vicar of Christ, the replacement of Christ, is all the same thing. When you look at it historically, it is all the same thing. So, my stance is the little horn is the papacy. And when we follow the history slowly and in detail, I believe that I can actually now prove this to be true. So once again, however, the truth of the matter is the well sometimes looks bottomless. I truly believe it is the responsibility of every Bible student to check and then recheck his biblical historical resources. I believe it is my responsibility to weigh the situation and then present my argument based upon the preponderance of the evidence. Also note, as more information becomes available, and this is going to be the key, as more information becomes available, there is no foul if you have to retract a statement. As we continue to unravel the mysteries in Daniel, I will continue to bring as many receipts as possible to support my argument. And I believe that is going to be very important in all of the lectures that I do, is that I bring receipts to help support my argument. Now, I want to bring up a slide. Okay, this is going to be slide number 4. And what I want to do is expound upon our explanations, and let's take a very close look at the papacy, because again, looking at this colossal figure with the Babylonians, the Medo-Persian Empire, the Greeks, the Romans, then after that, you have 10 invading tribes. Now, don't look at the number 10 as a solid number, meaning now that there were other barbarian tribes that invaded Rome. But because it makes mention of 10, we wanted to try to concentrate on the number 10, meaning now 10 tribes in particular, but not to say that only 10 tribes or barbarian tribes invaded Rome. I want to make sure that is crystal clear. Also, when these barbarian tribes invaded Rome, and they did not come with a peace party, this was not a friendly hooray invading of these barbarian tribes into Rome. This was a harsh, violent invasion of Rome, into Rome now by these barbaric tribes. I also want to state too now was that following the line of succession, then you have the little horn. And so looking at now these barbaric tribes, along with now this little horn that comes up later, this is going to try to, well, it's not going to try, it's going to actually now shape why I say that the United States of America can be traced first in the book of Daniel. Then expounding, it would be expounded upon in the book of Daniel, the 8th, 9, 10, 11, and 12. Once we get Daniel, the 8th chapter, first under lock and key, then we can go to other scriptures now to help support our argument, meaning now the book of Revelation. But I want to make sure that the foundation is talked about first. We are going to go into some scriptures in the book of Revelation, but I just wanted to make sure that everybody understands my position is that the book of Daniel first needs to be understood. Now, this particular piece of documentation that I brought up now, I believe I need to explain this a little bit more in detail. And I pray that when I brought this out over a year ago, that brothers and sisters were able to look into what I was trying to share when I talk about the history of the Christian church, the title of the book. Then we have the volume number, volume 3, page 327. This is documented history that can be proven based upon what we're about to read now. It says the Roman church state. Okay, so we have to understand what all of that means. Step by step. So this is a church that is now being established inside of a state called Rome. So we have to understand, what is this church? And my argument is that this church is actually the Roman Catholic Church. But before we have Roman Catholic Church, we have now the beginning stages of it, which is called the papacy. Is the papacy still in existence today? Absolutely. But I want to try to show the difference between the papacy of 538 AD versus now the papacy of the Roman Catholic Church of today. There's a difference between the two. But anyway, now, the Roman church state power became supreme in Christendom in 538 AD. And again, my proof is the history of the Christian church, which is the name of the book, volume 3, page 327. Now, due to a letter of the Roman Emperor Justinian, okay, very important, due to a letter of the Roman Emperor Justinian known as the Justinian Decree. Only thing a person would have to do is look up Justinian Decree, but first and foremost, look at the name of the book, the volume, and the page number. Now, the Justinian Decree set up and acknowledged the Bishop of Rome, which is in now the Western Empire. Justinian now was of the Eastern Empire. Now, what I have been doing is looking into the Western Empire. I'm not saying that there is no Eastern Empire, but what I'm trying to do is follow the trail one step at a time. Will I talk about the Eastern Empire? Absolutely, because I believe through scripture and through biblical history and just even regular history, we can see that Rome was actually split apart, first with Diocletian in 289 AD. It became official in 359, 389 AD by Constantine, where we have Rome in the west, Rome in the east. What Constantine did is that he moved the capital from Rome, Italy, now to Istanbul, Turkey. That is now the main headquarters now in Istanbul, Turkey. But again, I wanted to take this thing slow and only talk about right now the Western Empire. So going back to now Justinian, Justinian set up what we know today as the Justinian Creed. This Justinian Creed acknowledged the Bishop of Rome, which is in the West, as head of all churches. And the name of that church now is the Roman Catholic Church. Roman Catholic Church. It should also be acknowledged, so I don't want anybody to believe that I'm missing any key points here, is that I have also documentation when Justinian set up now the Bishop of Rome in the West as the head of all churches. This also referred to the papacy as the head of all churches in the East. I'm going to say it again. This decree that Justinian made was not only to the church in the West, but also in the East. I'm going to provide the book, the volume number, and the page when Justinian now actually made that decree. Now, let's start off again, one step at a time. It gave the Roman church state three things, and it's going to be up to you, the listening audience now, to understand what is political power. So now the papacy was given by Justinian one political power. You're going to have to do that research on your own. What is political power? By just saying political power, I'm sure we all know what that means. But again, if you want to fine tune the information, you should know what political power is. Justinian gave the church in Rome civil power. So political power, civil power, as well as ecclesiastical power. This letter became part of Justinian's code, the fundamental law of the empire, and that year, Pope Vigilius. Look that word up. Who is that? Pope Vigilius ascended the throne under the military protection of Belisarius. And this is where I think where the wheels fall off the wagon at. I am not saying that the Western bishop, who is now a head of state, he is now the papacy. I'm not saying that the Roman Catholic Church members put on shield and bucklers and rode on horses with swords now and began to fight their enemy. No. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that the Roman Catholic Church, under the Justinian decree, had at their disposal the military protection of Belisarius. That's what I'm saying. Now, I made mention now that the Roman Catholic Church uprooted three of the 10 horns there, that they uprooted three. Did the Roman Catholic Church, again, did they uproot it themselves? No. But what is happening is Justinian now is setting the stage for the papacy, and if the papacy has any problems, they again have the protection of Belisarius under the Justinian Code. Now, I had made mention earlier in the last class that I did, and even classes prior to that, is that the fall of Rome. When I say the fall of Rome, I'm talking about the invading of these barbaric tribes happened before 476 AD. Before. Rome reached the height of her power in 168 AD. As time continued, Rome began to have schisms inside of their empire. These schisms between the Congress and the Senate and other things that was going on in Rome began to weaken because there were problems inside of the government. inside of the empire of Rome. And let it also be known too now is that Rome is a pagan state. Pagan. Now, as Rome begins to decline in around the late 2nd century, early 3rd century is when these invaders started to come in. I am not disputing at all Justinian's power, which was in the east, how he now tries to now establish some order back in Eastern Rome. But what is interesting now is that at this time, we have in Eastern Rome, the consensus now is that they were an orthodox form of, let's see now, with their religion style. Meaning now is that their beliefs and the way that they had things set up in the East was different from the West. But in order to now to get some type of harmony between the two nations now, is that we're going to see now where Justinian is setting up the power of the papacy both in the West and the East. And of course, Justinian, because he had a general by the name of Belisarius now, is that he is now conquering and bringing in the papacy. For example, a person might work for, let's say, J.B. Hunt. J.B. Hunt is a trucking company. Now, the driver of the truck, okay, his name is not J.B. Hunt. The driver of the truck name is, let's say, Kevin. That's his name. Kevin is driving J.B. Hunt's truck. Kevin gets to his destination. The company says, J.B. Hunt, you're next. But J.B. Hunt is the owner of the company. The driver's name is not J.B. Hunt. His name is Kevin. Everything that Kevin does is in the name of J.B. Hunt. When he makes his delivery safely, the driver made the delivery safely, but the credit goes to J.B. Hunt. And it's the same thing here when we begin to look at now the Pope Vigilius. Everything that Vigilius is doing now is because of the Justinian Code. He has at his disposal now Belisarius. So it's not actually Vigilius now that is actually that is doing these campaigns against those that oppose the papacy. It is actually Belisarius. And it's not even actually Justinian. Justinian gives the okay. Belisarius is actually the general along with his army now that is actually doing the campaigns now in support of Justinius. I pray that that is understood. Mishpachah. Historical facts. The military commander Belisarius under Emperor Justinian I removed 2 of the horns, the Vandals, the Ostrogoths. His actions initiated their eventual demise and removal. Clovis, he has to also be thrown into the picture. And I've never brought up anything about Clovis. Never. But guess what? Clovis also plays a major role in this whole 538 era because it was Clovis who is the first king of the Franks, removed 1 horn, and that horn that he removed was the Hercules. So, again, Justinian removed 2 horns, the Vandals and the Ostrogoths. Clovis the first, king of the Franks, removed 1 horn, namely the Hercules. Now, again, I strongly advise anyone who is following this trail that I'm following is that the papacy, the history of the papacy, it is broad. And what I'm not going to do, that I can't do, because there's other things that I need to talk about, it is now your responsibility now to go into depth and read the things that I have read. But I can't do a whole teaching on the papacy from A to Z. Now, I have read a lot of information that I have not brought out. And with reading the information, I'm going to show the United States of America in Daniel. All right, so let's move on to the next slide. Now, the benefits of bringing receipts to your arguments. Because me personally, I don't believe in the teachings of just believe me. I believe it is a responsibility of every more, every elder, when he's doing his presentation, whatever he's doing, he's teaching, he needs to bring receipts so that the people that are listening can say, okay, then let me check his sources to make sure that the information that he's given or she is given is correct. That's being fair. Now, Lucius Ferraris promptum bibliothek, excuse me, these Latin words. This is pronounced bibliotheca. Article Papa, talking about the papacy. Papa 2, volume 6, page 29. I'm bringing receipts. The Bishop of Rome, we're talking about the papacy here now. Look how it is documented and recorded. The Bishop of Rome is of so great authority and power, watch this now, that the papacy, which is he, can modify, explain, or interpret even divine laws. These laws that is being referred to here are biblical laws. Remember, it made mention that this particular one would change laws and times. This is documented in the book of Daniel. Now, we have someone actually doing this, and it is documented. The papacy can modify, explain, or interpret even divine laws. Watch this now, it gets deeper. The Bishop of Rome can modify divine laws since his power is not of man, but of God. And he acts as, this word here again, vicegerent or vicegerent, which means a representative of God upon earth. So what is happening now is that we see this little horn because he's a little horn. The reason why he's called a little horn, because his beginnings now, he was a little horn. But he grew in power. But in 538, he was only considered a little horn, especially in comparison to now the 10 horns. He was little in comparison to them, but this little horn began to grow. All right, so I pray that that is understood. The relationship between the papacy and America. I'm going to show, not today, because I want to try to keep these classes now with inside of an hour and 15 minutes tops. I don't want to throw a whole bunch of information out here. But I want to show now the relationship between the papacy and America. Meaning now is that I'm going to show voice recordings. Voice recordings of the relationship between the papacy and America. But I have to do this in sequence. I'm going to bring out information from the year 2000 and 2000, and the latest piece of information that I have now of the relationship between the papacy and America as far as the year 2020, And the latest papal bull that was put into place just last year in regards to now the Jubilee that the papacy is talking about that is supposed to happen in the year 2025. So the papacy is still writing edicts. They're still doing it. It hasn't stopped. Now, the relationship between the papacy and America, please pay very close attention to the papacy and its characteristics. The characteristics of the papacy is this. The papacy started out as a little kingdom, a little horn. Fact number 2, the papacy came up among the 10 kingdoms. I want this to be understood. The 10 kingdoms came up first, then came the little horn. Fact number 3, coming up after Rome is divided into 10 kingdoms. Let me break that down. Rome was divided, Western Rome and Eastern Rome. Rome is divided. We have now in Western Rome 10 barbaric tribes invading Rome. And I talked about, I believe, very explicit now when I talked about the role of Justinian along with Vigilius and also Belisarius. My argument is that the fact number 4 is the uprooting of 3 tribal kingdoms. And what I did was I explained that a lot more in detail about Belisarius, Vigilius, and Justinian. Where I'm trying to share now is that, again, the papacy, the pope, the bishops, the cardinals, they themselves did not go to war with these nations. It was Justinian. And actually, it wasn't Justinian, but it was his general, Belisarius, and his army. But everything is operating under the Justinian decree. The little horn is a diverse kingdom. It has a man as a figurehead. This little horn blasphemed God. And I just brought out one example of that in Lucius Foresaris Prompta Biblithecia article Papa 2, volume 6, page 29. I only brought out one so far, just one, where he begins to speak out and modify divine law, and that divine law that he was modifying, and he's saying now, which is the papacy, that his power is not from man, but of God himself, and that he acts as a representative of God upon earth. This is documented in the papacy's history. He persecutes and makes war with the saints. We're going to talk about that. The papacy, the little kingdom, thought to change prophecy and law of God, and the papacy now ruled for 1,260 years. These 10 characteristics of the little horn needs to be explained. Let's move on. This guy here, okay, let's go back here. Okay, I wanted to bring out a little bit more information on slide number 6, all right? Slide number 6. I wanted us to take an even closer look at characteristic number 7, all right? Let me back this up right quick, all right? Let me back this up, because I want everybody to follow along what's going on here, because I believe I have a lot of information to share, and my sister, she's always here, Sharon Bokato to you. And another thing too, hit the like button, all right? Hit the like button so that I can create like an algorithm. Hit the subscribe button. That way, again, this information can get out. And if anybody have any questions with anything, by all means, please, 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 please leave a message. But I want to take a very close look at the characteristic number 7. What is blasphemy? What is that? Let's take a look at Mark, the 2nd chapter, 5 through 7, all right? I want to look at what is the word blasphemy. What is that? All right? I should have actually put that slide in, but I didn't. So I'm going to be reading from the King James Version, and we're going to go to the book of Mark, the 2nd chapter, I'll read verses 5 to 7. And this is the question. What is blasphemy? And we're looking at now characteristic number 7. Mark, the 2nd chapter, verse 5. I'm going to read down to verse 7. When the Mashiach saw their faith, he said unto the sick of the palsy, Son, watch this, son, thy sins be forgiven thee. But there were certain of the scribes sitting there and reasoning in their hearts. Why doeth this man, which is the Mashiach, thus speak blasphemies? Blasphemies. Who can forgive sins but the Father or God only? Who else can do that? And so the charge that the Pharisees, the religious leaders now had with the Mashiach is that the Mashiach said that he had the authority under the Father to forgive sins. But wait a minute. The papacy said now is that they have the power to forgive sins. Meaning now is that when a penitent goes into the Roman Catholic Church, he goes into a confessional booth where the penitent sits on one side and the bishop sits on the other side. And then the person then begins to confess their sins. They say, Father, I have sinned. When they say, Father, I have sinned, they're referring to the bishop that sits on the other side of the confessional. And then the penitent begins to say or explain his sin. And then the person now, which is the penitent, makes his confession. He throws money in the little box. And then the bishop says, son, your sins are forgiven. Because the Pope says that he has this power here on earth. And when we look at the word vicar of Christ, the word vicar of Christ means the replacement of Christ. He is the anti-Christ, and the word anti only means, let me put it this way. The definition is broad. The word antichrist also means the replacement of Christ. Not only, and the word against means instead of. Someone is sitting in a power position claiming to be God, along with bishops and cardinals, and he's saying that he has the ability to forgive sins. I have more. John the 10th chapter. John the 10th chapter. John the 10th chapter. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Let's see. John the 10th chapter. I have more. John 10, Mishpachah, 24 to 34. I'm going to read this kind of quick. Then came the Yahudim with the Jews round about him and said unto him, How long doest thou make us to doubt? If thou be the Mashiach, the anointed one, tell us plainly. The Mashiach, Jesus answered them, I told you, and you believe not. The works that I do in my Father's name, not the papacy. In the Father's name, my works in my Father's name, they bear witness of me. But he's talking to the religious leaders, but you believe not, because you are not of my sheep. Talking about the sheepfold consists of those that believe in the Mashiach. And the Pharisees, the Sadducees, the religious leaders during the first century were not believers of the Mashiach and that he came in the Father's name. This now put them in a different category, meaning now is that they're not considered sheep. I'm going to read on. My sheep hear my voice, and I know them, and they follow me. And I give unto them eternal life, and they shall never perish. Neither shall any man pluck them out of my hand. My Father gave them me. My Father which gave them me is greater than all, and no man is able to pluck them out of my Father's hand. I and my Father are one. Then the Yahudim, or the Jews, took up stones against the Mashiach to stone him. The Mashiach answered them, Many good works have I showed you from my Father. For which of these works do you stone me? Watch the response. The Jews answered him, saying, For a good work we stone thee not, but for blasphemy. And because thou, being a man, makest thyself God. Mishpachah, I'm going to show through dates, page numbers, and the authors now, where the papacy now is saying and made an edict that they are actually God incarnated on the planet Earth. Once again, it is the papacy now that is blaspheming God. So blaspheming is being able to forgive sins. You're talking about you're one with God. Let's read it. The Jews answered him, saying, For a good work we stone thee not, but for blasphemy, and because thou being a man makest thyself God. And then the Mashiach goes on to answer, which goes on to something else. So I'm not going to tackle that. The Mashiach answered them, It is not written in your law, I said that you are gods. All right. So I just wanted to make sure that everybody was following along, and I did not add or take away anything from the Bible or the history. Now, this relationship of the papacy and the emergence of America. Watch this now. The fall of the papacy, the emergence of America, and Napoleon Bonaparte is going to be very important in history. I talked about him about a year ago, but I never really showed like any historical facts on him. But guess what I'm going to do today? I'm going to bring out some information on Napoleon Bonaparte. In February 1798, because I'm talking about the fall of the papacy and the emergence of America. In February 1798, French troops under the commander of General Louis Alexandre Berthier and Napoleon Bonaparte captured Pope Pius VI during the French Revolutionary Wars. Because during this time, once again, we have the French Revolutionary Wars. But make sure that you pay very close attention to now Louis Alexandre Berthier and Napoleon Bonaparte. They captured which pope? Pope Pius VI, taking him as a prisoner to France where he died. That was the end of the papacy. Meaning now, I'm talking about in regards to now of that Justinian decree that was made in 538 AD. Did the papacy, the Roman Catholic Church, continue after 1798? Absolutely. Absolutely, they continued. But they no longer had this military behind them. When you look at the papacy today, what you see are just common soldiers that they have. But they don't have an army. They don't have a military army with F-15s and fighter jets and tanks. They don't have that. Their military, what they had as a military at their disposal came to an end in 1798, but the religion continued because we know that they continued because the religion still exists today. And when you begin to look at Rome, Rome is a very small country in comparison now to everybody else. Very small. Let me check here on what's going on in the chat. And then claiming to be God, forgiving sins, not a Messiah, exactly. High blaspheming to the heavens. Absolutely, you're 100% correct. And they haven't healed anyone, not one. Absolutely. So there's a lot of information, once again, on the papacy. But what I wanted to, but what's interesting now, I want everybody to follow along. The fall of the papacy, and then we have something else happening. Okay, and we're going to go into that in a whole lot more detail when we begin to talk about now how did America come into play. And let me just let everybody off the hook here. America is not an extension of the papacy. America is not an extension of America. And I'll leave it there. But what I do want to continue on is, did the papacy fulfill Bible prophecy of 1,260 years? Once again, did the papacy fulfill Bible prophecy of 1,260 years? Looking at 538 AD and 1,600 years, not 1,260 days, but 1,260 years, gives us now 1798. The reason why I believe that this is important is because I don't believe that the little horn is actually Nero. It was not Antiochus Epiphanes IV. They do not fit the 1,260 years. They don't fit the 2,300 evenings and mornings. They don't even fit the 1,260 days. They don't fit that description. Now, I'm not saying that Antiochus Epiphanes did not create havoc during his reign, during the Seleucid dynasty. I'm not saying that Antiochus Epiphanes didn't kill a lot of Israelites. I'm not saying that Nero didn't kill a lot of Israelites. But we have to identify, did the little horn come up during the time of the Greeks? No, absolutely not. Because we have to follow succession. Succession goes Babylon, Medo-Persian Empire, Greeks, Romans, 10 horns, then the little horn. The little horn did not come up during the time of the Greeks. And my other argument, once again, is that Nero, he did kill a lot of Israelites. As we see now, the disposing of Israel in 70 AD, but still my argument is that there was a bigger war that happened in 134 AD under the guy by the name of Simon Bar Kokhba. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. All right? So, let's move on. The papacy. All right? The papacy, for me, is the little horn. And we all know this building here, this cathedral in Rome. All right, let's talk about this a little bit. It is my argument here, Mr. Carr, tracing America in Daniel, the only entity that fits all 10 characteristics that I just mentioned earlier is no other than the papacy. Let me make sure that I'm clear with this, and I will expound upon this a little bit later. Rome sits upon 7 hills, not the papacy. There's a difference between Rome and even the papacy, and I'll talk about that a little bit more in detail in the lesson. The difference, because Rome was an empire first, then there was the papacy. So location is going to also be very important. Once again, location is going to be very important. Rome, the city, was built first, then we have the papacy. Let's move on. Let's look in the book of Revelation and track the emergence of America. I'm just going to read it. I'm not breaking down anything. I want to read it first, and then I would actually now give my commentary. Revelation, the 13th chapter, verses 1 through 3. And I, which is John the Revelator, stood upon the sand of the sea, and saw a beast rise up out of the sea. This beast had 7 heads and 10 horns, and all the world wondered after the beast. Let's read on. I want everybody to please notice by description between the 2 beasts and what I'm about to read next. Watch this now. And I, John the Revelator, beheld another beast come out of the earth, not the sea, but the earth. And there was another beast come up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb, and he spoke as a dragon. So again, I'm not giving any commentary. I'm not breaking anything down, but I just want to make sure that everybody is following along the description between the 2 beasts. There was a beast that came out of the sea. Then there was a beast that came out of the earth. The beast that came out of the earth had 2 horns like a lamb, and he spoke as a dragon. That's in Revelation, the 13th chapter, verse 11. I'm not going to give you any commentary now. Let's just read it. Revelation, the 13th chapter, verses 15 to 16. I'm jumping around here a little bit. And he, you have to identify who's the he, and he had power to give life into the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. I was about to say something, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep my thoughts to myself for now. And he caused all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads. We're just reading it for now. All right? We're going to come back to it. We're just reading it for now. Revelation, the 7th. Hold on. What did I just do here? Revelation 17th chapter, verse 3. I want to make sure that my slides are keeping up. Okay, here we go. So he carried me away, Revelation 17 and 3. So he carried me away, this is still talking about John the Revelator, in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast. Now, I am going to give some commentary here. I know that everybody knows that this was not a literal woman, but this woman is describing someone or something. And I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. Read it again, because I don't want to lead the witness. So he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. Revelation 17:3. Revelation 17:15. And he said unto me, the waters which thou sawest, where the whore sitteth. Watch this again, 17:15. And he said unto me, the waters which thou sawest, where the whore sitteth, are peoples, 1, multitudes, 2, nations, 3, and tongues. I'm not going to break down anything. I'm just going to read it first. Now, this is where it gets very interesting. This is where it gets interesting. Okay, here we go. Symbols. It is very important for us to understand symbols so that we can properly break down Daniel, the book of Daniel, and also the book of Revelation. What is a beast? In order to break down the book of Daniel and the book of Revelation, we need to know what is a beast. A beast is a political power. A beast is also known as a kingdom. A beast is also known as a nation. And it is also known to not just a power, but a superpower. A superpower. The Babylonians were a superpower. The Medo-Persian Empire was a superpower. The Greeks was a superpower. The Romans was a superpower. Political power, a kingdom, and a nation is a beast. Waters. What is waters? Waters and sea. What is that? Waters represents people and a densely populated area. Waters and sea represents people in a densely populated area. What does a horn represent? A horn represents a king, a kingdom, and power. What is blasphemy? Blasphemy, there's a lot in scripture about blasphemy. But let's just look at some of them. It is now your responsibility now to look at the rest. Blasphemy is claiming to be God. Who did that in history? Who? Are we waiting for something to happen 2,000 more years into the future? Historically, someone, an entity in 538 AD claimed to be God. They also claim to have power to forgive sins. That's what blasphemy is. Now, we have to also understand time, singular, times, plural, dividing of time. 42 months, 1,260 days, 1,200 literal years. All of this needs to be understood in order for us to understand the book of Daniel and the book of Revelation. First, beginning with the book of Daniel, because the book of Daniel is the foundation. My argument is that if a person never had the book of Daniel, you could not understand the book of Revelation. This is the reason why Gabriel is talking to Daniel first. during the early 5th century. Now let me back up here. Yeah, the late 5th century BC, when Gabriel began to explain now this whole vision. Now, John the Revelator expounds upon Daniel. So we have again time, dividing it times 42 months, 1,260 days, 1,200 literal years. The dragon. The dragon is Satan, Nachash, Hashatan, pagan Rome. That's the dragon. The sword, according to the Bible now, the sword is represented as the Bible and civil power. The image, the word image means likeness. Worship means to bow down and prostrate in submission and obedience. Okay, and this comes about when people bow down and kiss the Pope's hand and recognizing the Pope in his position as Father. The Father of all religious churches. I'm here to share is that you're going to be shocked. And if you understood, let me see what we have with Outcasts at many 13 denominations. Okay, now, when we begin to look at this umbrella and begin to look at all of these religions now that fall under Catholicism, and I'm going to show you all of these religions now that are falling under Catholicism, it might amaze you. And how now these secret assassins called the Jesuits now are actually in play today. And it is documented. Watch this now. It is documented that even the Jesuits now might have been responsible for the assassination of Abraham Lincoln. Yes, Mishmachah. The Jesuits, Catholicism, the papacy, that doctrine runs deep in blood. Deep. But I will not be able to bring out every single detail on the atrocities of the Roman Catholic Church, the papacy, and what they did. It is your responsibility to do that. But the things that I'm going to be talking about, I'm going to bring up names, dates, and video recordings. All right? Now, let's move on. Let's now use the symbol chart to decipher Revelation, the 13th chapter, beginning at verse 1. And I, John the Revelator, stood upon the sand of the sea and saw a beast. And if you notice now, I have the word beast highlighted. And I saw a beast rise up out of the sea. So we know what a beast is. A beast is a political power. And we know now that waters and seas represents people in a densely populated area. So, and I, John the Revelator, stood upon the sand of the sea and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his head the name of blasphemy. Now, how do we read the book of Revelation? It has come to my understanding that you cannot read, and it's not that I just had this revelation, but you can't read the Bible the way that you read any other book. It jumps from the past, then it goes to the present, then it goes into the future. So we have to make sure that we unravel this thing correctly. My argument is that this beast that rises up out of the sea is actually the fourth beast in the colossal figure that Daniel is being shown, having 7 heads and 10 horns. We're now beginning to talk about a religious system, meaning now the 7 heads. My argument is that Rome, at her beginnings, stood upon 7 mountains or 7 hills. The 10 horns now is referring to these invading tribes. These 7 heads on how Rome got started. I'm going to share some information on that with names, dates, and a little history behind it. And upon his horns, 10 crowns. These 10 crowns is representing these barbaric tribes, and they began to invade Rome around the early 3rd century AD. BC. Hold on, get my dates here correct. The barbaric tribes invaded Rome during the 3rd century AD. Okay, not BC, AD. I want to make sure that that's clear. And upon his head, the name of blasphemy. So Revelation, the 13th chapter, verse 1, comprises a whole bunch of history packed in one verse. A bunch of history. The beast, Rome, coming from a particular location called the sea, which means from amongst people, having 7 heads, talking about the establishment on how Rome became Rome. 10 horns representing the invading tribes that invaded Rome in the 3rd century AD. And upon his horn, 10 crowns, and upon his head, the name of blasphemy, now begins to talk about the latter end of Rome, because the blasphemy now is what this horn is actually doing. It's also comprised now of the Roman Catholic Church and even Rome itself. This is talking about the papacy. I have more information to prove what I'm saying. Let's move on. Revelation 13:2. And the beast, which is the 4th beast, which I saw, watch this now, was likened to a leopard. So this 4th beast has the characteristics of a leopard, and his feet was as the feet of a bear. So this 4th beast would have the characteristics of the leopard, which is who? The Greeks. The feet of the bear, of a bear, represents the what? The Medo-Persian Empire. And his mouth as the mouth of a lion. The lion represents Babylon. Watch this now. And the dragon gave him his great authority. What does that mean? The dragon represents Satan, pagan Rome. The image represents likeness. Blaspheming is claiming to be God, claiming to have power to forgive sins. Waters and sea, like I may mention earlier, represents people in a densely populated area, and a beast represents political power, kingdom, nation, and a superpower. And these are all symbols now representing the papacy, and worship means to bow down and prostrate now in submission and obedience. So, looking at Revelation the 13th chapter, verse 2, and it makes mention, and the dragon gave him his power. Who is this dragon? My argument is that this dragon is actually Rome. Gave him his power. Who is the him? Who is the dragon that gave him his power? At the beginning stages of the papacy, Justinian gave the papacy his power, his seat, and his great authority. Once again, and the dragon, which is still Rome, and I just made mention of Justinian, gave him, which is another Roman, which is the papacy, which is Vesgilius, his power and his seat and great authority. Revelation 13:2. Let's move on. Revelation 13, chapter verses 3 and 4. And I saw one of his heads as it were wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the world wondered after the beast. And they worshiped the dragon, which gave power unto the beast, and they worshiped the beast, saying, Who is like unto the beast, and who is able to make war with him? Now, the way I'm looking at Revelation the 13th chapter, verses 3 and 4. And again, I can't bring out everything in today's session. What I do want everybody to understand is that the Roman Empire came back into power. The Roman Empire came back into power in 800 AD. Remember, I made mention earlier of a guy by the name of Napoleon Bonaparte. And I made mention in February of 1798, French troops under the command of General Louis Alexandria Berthier and Napoleon Bonaparte captured the Pope Pius VI during the French Revolutionary Wars, taking that Pope as prisoner to France, where he died. When we begin to look at Napoleon Bonaparte, how he goes into the main headquarters, he goes into the church, takes off the crown of Pope Pius VI and put it on his head, takes his ring from off his finger. That is unheard of. You can't do that. Excuse me, not to the Pope. But this is now what Napoleon Bonaparte actually did. So, to help us to understand what is actually happening in verse 18, historically, I will ask the person to look at what is going on with Napoleon, what is going on now with Berthier, who actually took Pope Pius VI, locked him up in prison, and he died there. So let me read Revelation 13, chapter verses 3 and 4 one more time. And I saw one of his heads as were wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the world wondered after the beast, and they worshipped the dragon, which gave power unto the beast, and they worshipped the beast, saying, Who is like unto the beast, and who is able to make war with him? This is talking about when the papacy was now actually in her glory days, where she was actually able to now implement or use now at her disposal Belisarius, because of the Justinian decree that was made by him to enforce the papacy, which then is going to bring us now into what was actually happening now even in Eastern Rome. What is happening is that I don't believe that a lot of folks understand how much power the papacy had in making war with the saints. Some are even understanding that saints can only be Israelites. And a saint is a person now who is actually a believer in Torah. I'm not excluding Israelites. But what I'm trying to share here now is that from the very beginning, this AKA religion was supposed to have been a religion of faith, believing in the Mashiach. And this came to our understanding now if we had a clear understanding of Abraham. Abraham now had the commission to circumcise everybody in his house. Meaning now is that could only Israelites participate in the feast days? No. others from other nations could follow as long as they followed the same protocol as Israel. Does this take anything away from Israel? Absolutely not, because Israel is first fruits. Let me say this again. Israel is first fruits. Israel is Bikor, Bikurim. Israel is first fruits. But can the other nations now, can the other nations participate in Passover? Can they participate in Shavuot? Can they participate in the Feast of Unleavened Bread? And I'm not going in order. Can they do Teruah, Yom Kippur? Can they do the Feast of Sukkot? They sure can, as long as they acknowledge the rightful heir. So when I say now is that when the papacy made war against the saints, not only the biological seed of Israel died during those wars. That's because that's not factual in history at all. And I want it to be understood. I am not putting Israel, the biological seed of Israel, on the back burner. Because it's the book of Romans. Let me go to that. The book of Romans. I'm going to just share this scripture here because we only have about 4 more slides and then we'll be done. So give me about 15 minutes, Mr. Picard, and we'll be done because I said that I don't want to do classes over an hour. Romans, the 9th chapter. Okay, Romans, the 9th chapter. I'm just going to read this just a little bit. I, Paul, because he's speaking to the Romans, I, Paul, say the truth in the Mashiach, or in Christ, I lie not. My conscience also bear me witness in the Ruach HaKodesh, or the Holy Spirit, that I have great heaviness and continual sorrow in my heart. For I wish that myself were accursed or separated from Mashiach for my brethren, my kinsmen according to the flesh, who are Israelites, to whom pertaineth the adoption, and the glory, too, and the covenants, and the giving of the law, and the services of the Father, and the promises. So I am not excluding Israel. I'm only saying that saints could also be prescribed to others that are following Torah. Israel is the rightful heir, but the other nations now can also eat as long as they're now following Torah. Let's move on. Verse 19. And there was given unto him, so who gave unto him a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies? And power was given to him to continue for 42 months. And he opened his mouth in blasphemy against the Father, to blaspheme his name and his tabernacle and them that dwell in heaven. And it was given unto him to make war with the saints and to overcome them. And power was given him over all kindreds and tongues and nations. And that did happen under the papacy. And those of you now that have been following along with me, I brought out documentation after documentation after documentation of how the papacy now was actually killing people because they were not following Catholicism. Because during the time of 538 AD, one of the dominant religions at that time was Arius and Arianism. And this is the reason why I brought out, I know I'm bringing out a whole lot of information. Arianism, why was there the council in 325 AD by Constantine? And what was that Nicene council about? There were 7 Nicene councils. What about the councils of Trent? How many councils were there about the Council of Trent? And all of this now was centered around the papacy and putting people to death because Catholicism was supposed to have been a universal religion, operating both in the West and the East. Come on. The evidence is right there. But we have to do this now, teaching step by step. And we will get to the year 2020 when a decree was made, because I'm going to argue the fact with proof that the papacy is still writing edicts to this day. To this very day. Let's move on. 2 more slides. Actually, 3 more slides. Revelation 13 and 8. And all that dwelled upon the earth shall worship him whose names are not written in the book of life of the Lamb, slain from the foundation of the world. Let me read that again. And all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him. The him isn't an actual person. The him is a religious organization. There were many popes, but the him is talking about a religious organization, not one particular person. They should worship him or this religious organizations whose names are not written in the book of the life of the Lamb, slain from the foundation of the world. Let's read on. Dignity and duties of the priest, page 34 of the Ligonier. I just want to bring out facts. Dignity and duties of the priest, page 34. I'm just making sure that as I move from slide to slide, that you guys are following along with me, all right? Now, were the Redeemer, which is the Mashiach, to descend into a church and sit in a confessional to administer the sacrament of penance, and a priest to sit in a confessional, the Mashiach or Jesus would say over each penitent, this is in Latin, this is documented, facts, in the archives of the edicts of the Catholic Church. It would say, ego or ego te absolvo, which is Latin, for it means for I forgive you. The priest will likewise say over each of his penance, ego te absolvo, and the penance of each will be equally absolved. Only thing a person would have to do, because I only read part of it. If you really want to, listen, if you really want to understand the papacy, you're going to have to read it. And all arrows point, every single arrow points to the papacy as the little horn, as the Antichrist. Google dignity and duties of the priest, page 34. That's all you would have to do. Don't dispute with me. Read it. Let's move on. The state religion. Mr. Picard, there's only one more slide after this and we'll be done. Let's read up on the papacy here. And I'm going to give, again, receipts, dates, names, and chapters. Watch this. The state religion. Thus we see Roman Catholicism was made the state religion in 538. And all other religions were forbidden. What gave special significance to these edicts? Not one edict, but edicts, plural, of Justinian was the fact that he had already in 533 declared the Bishop of Rome to be the head of the universal church. universal church, and has subjected all the priests, even of the east, under the see of Rome. I'm not making this stuff up. So not just the West, but the East. The Roman Catholic Church, the papacy, the Pope, was to oversee not just the West, but the East. Right. Every idle word, as my sister is saying, every idle word every idle word that man shall speak, they shall give account thereof in the day of judgment. And I agree with you. This fact he wrote to Pope John II. Look at the date I'm giving. I'm giving the name Pope John II on March the 15th, 533 in the following language. I'm not making this up. I'm giving the name of the Pope, the date, and the year, giving the edicts also with it. All arrows point to the papacy. With honor to the apostolic, we hasten to bring to the knowledge of your holiness everything related to the condition of the church, as we have always had great desire to preserve the unity of our apostolic church, is talking about C, and the condition of the holy churches of God, as they exist at the present time, that they may remain without disturbance or opposition. Therefore, we have exerted ourselves to unite all the priests of the East and subject them to the see of your holiness, which is in the West. For we do not suffer anything which was reference to the state of the church, even though what causes the difficulty may be clear and free from doubt, to be discussed without being brought to the notice of your holiness. And who is the holiness? The holiness is actually Papa, the Pope, who people are calling the Father, the Roman Catholic Church, aka the papacy that started and got its power in 538 AD under Justinian. Because you are the head of all holy churches, for we shall exert ourselves in every way, then it has in parentheses, as already have been stated, to increase the honor and authority of your see. Therefore, we request your paternal affection, that you, by your letters, inform us that the most holy bishop of this fair city, and that your brother, the patriarch, who himself has written by the same messengers to your holiness, eager in all things to follow the apostolic see of your blessings, in order that you may make it clear to us that your holiness acknowledges all the matters which have been set forth above. The civil law of Justinian, translated by, listen to the addresses that I'm giving, receipts I'm giving, translated by S.P. Scott, A.M., in volumes now 17, book 12, pages 11 through 13. Last slide. Mishpachah, it's the papacy, the papacy, the papacy. The little horn is the papacy. He is the beast, okay, that comes out of the sea. But also, I want us to understand what comes out of the sea and what comes out of the earth. which is going to tie us in to the relationship tracing America in the book of Daniel. This relationship between the papacy and America. Mishpachah, I want to thank you. Okay? I want to thank you for your time and your participation. And as always, my sister Sharon, she's always there listening in. And what I'm arguing is I don't want anybody to believe anything that I say. Nothing. Watch the video again. Look at the dates that I'm giving. Look at the volume numbers that I'm giving. Look at the page numbers that I'm giving. I'm giving all of this for you now to do your homework. And this has nothing to do with proving who's right and who's wrong. If you believe that the little horn is Nero, if you believe that is Antiochus Epiphanes IV, that's fine. But what you can't say is that Elder Zakane Kasadaba did not produce dates, receipts with his arguments. You can't say that I didn't do that. Mishpachah, this is done in love. All right? This is really, really done in love. I don't have any animosity against any of my brothers and sisters. Let's work together. Let's work together. Let's say that everything that I'm saying is incorrect, and I'm going to have to change my position sometime in the future. If I have to do that, okay, then fine. But right now, as of today, all right, I don't see that happening because these dates are going to still be there. But if the Ruach HaKodesh is moving you, okay, Mishpachah, your support is needed. Okay, these academia reports, this information that I'm coming across to help share with you, is not free. I'm not begging for anything, but your support is needed. All right. So if the Father moves you, it's $ KASADAHBA Kasadaba, donations and free will offerings. I did have the phone line open. I'm not sure if the phone line is actually open, but what I'll do is the next time I'll make sure the phone line is definitely open. And with that, Mishpachah, I'm going to end today's service. I pray that the Father continues to Baruch you and your Father. Stay girded up. All right, we're living in some real serious times here. I want to make sure that everybody stays on their square. And until the next time, Mishpachah, I'm going